Hello. I was recently going through one of my blogs doing a sort of a cull, a sort of like a winnowing of the of old posts that were more than 10 years old. Excuse me. And so that got me kind of thinking about things a bit because it's really weird looking over old stuff and seeing on the one hand how much you have changed, and on the other hand, how much the world appears to have changed as well, as far as you could see. Um, so it's an interesting thing, but like now, as things are now, I it's almost like I feel two divergent things. Yeah, because I'm very I'm very aware of how apparent a shift in power has become, how things really have sort of like changed and shifted. Certainly at the visible level, who knows how long this has been sort of like percolating through and developing. I'm sure it's like way beyond anything that I was aware of. Um, but things really have, the power has shifted. Um, it's shifted towards something which is transnational, yeah, and not based in nation states. In fact, which seems to actually be antagonistic towards the idea of nation states. Um, and it's something which is anti-democratic, and that goes with being against nation states because you don't get democracy without there being a kind of a nation with a structure that you can you can actually engage with to actually express representative democracy here. So um, it makes sense that that shift would be also be anti-democratic, and in fact, it's anti-demos itself. Yeah, anti the people, anti the sense of the people. Yeah, this is why we have this obsession with terms like populism as something negative at the moment. I think um, it's it's like the people become the threat rather than what you are or what you are a part of. Yeah, and that's a very important shift as well. Um, Everything has become uh, very identity based as well, and that's a replacement for the old sense of class because the sense of class has shifted as the elite class has shifted. I think. Um, um, and so things have to have so identity politics has been a very big thing, a very big part, a very big tool in this shift in power. It's not the shift in power itself, it's just a tool, I think. Yeah. um, and of course, that if you think about it, that again goes with the whole thing of like being anti-people, anti-demos. Yeah. um, because the old sense of class was basically sort of like working class, versus ruling class, and it was majority versus elite. But the thing is, what at one time would have been seen as, and well, probably I guess they still are in a way, seen as left wing ideologies, have become the elite ideology, um, and as those. And as the left was basically rejected by the working class, and it always has been, pretty much, um, certainly in the form of sort of like of out and out socialism and out and out communism. Yeah, socialism, communism, same thing, really. When you get away from sort of middle class fantasies, of redressing, sort of like of dressing up. Uh, Basically, social liberalism as something more radical. Yeah, um, but you would actually have to find a way to circumvent the mass of people. Yeah, in order to establish the power of that elite. Yeah, so you could see that, like, uh, finding a way to circumvent democracy and the nation state and the working class would all be very important in some weird way. Yeah, in some weird mutated form of of left-wing ideology, which is, of course, yeah, that's just it's pretty weird, but that's sort of like how I see it having gone, you know. And the ideological basis of that, I mean, I do see it as being a lot of it coming from postmodernism, you know, coming from postmodernism. A lot of this stuff, both that, you know, all of these things, the identity-based politics, and the general shift, yeah, because postmodernism allows you to detach your abstracted sense of fighting power and power imbalances, and it allows you to detach them completely from the basis of ordinary life for people and from things like class. Yeah, so that again, I think makes some sense. Yeah, but this ideological thing, it has actually sort of like infiltrated institutions. I think you can see that. You see that, and you see that in all sorts of things. I think it's there. It's there in academia, very obviously. I think it's there in the civil service. It's there in the police force. It's there in activist judges. Yeah, and we have them. Believe me, you know. So it's there in the legal system in some respects as well. Yeah. There's this infiltration, or this sort of like, you know, this spread of ideology which has become extremely dominant, and that's part of this shift in power, I think. Yeah. And the place of the law is interesting in it, I think. Yeah, especially in the sense of international law and human rights law. And I think it's very, very important to understand this. This is one of these major Orwellian sort of like fulcrums or whatever, I think. Yeah, the whole, because you think, well, human rights law, what could be wrong with that? This must be a good thing. Yeah, everyone wants human rights, right? But the thing is that the actual function of human rights has changed, and you have to remember that we formed all of our stuff over a long period of time. Yeah, that's where we got our human rights from, over a long period of time, developing within actual organic societies. Yeah. And as I understand it, after the Second World War, the way human rights law was couched, yeah, in international terms, yeah, the way human rights law was couched was to protect populations against their governments. So it's to protect populations from the state, yeah, the power of the state. Now, human rights law, as it stands now, has over this period of time been mutated. I mean, in general, it's been mutated, but I think this carries over probably into an international law as well. But I'm not any expert on it. But like, you know, human rights law has now mutated into something which primarily protects minorities against majorities. Now you have to think about this. How do you protect minorities against majorities? Well, you can only do it through the power of the state. So instead of being something which limited the power of the state to protect the majority of people, to protect the populace, yeah, it's become something which expands the power of the state to supposedly protect minorities against the populace. Yeah. And this is why human rights law, as it has evolved, has become fundamentally anti-democratic. Yeah, because you can't do this without subverting democracy, and this is exactly what we see in the use of human rights law and international law again and again, especially now we've got things like the Supreme Court in the UK. This is what you get. You get something, a system which uses law as a way of subverting democracy and trying to overthrow democracy. Yeah, yeah. You don't elect the judges. You don't elect these sort of people who make laws. This is why things like, you know, the European Commission are in potential so malign. Yeah, because nobody's getting to actually directly vote in the people who will make the laws. And so this rule by lawyer, basically, this supposed rule of law, which is actually ruled by lawyers, is essentially a, a subversion of democracy and a replacement of democracy by a different kind of elite power. And this is again another part of the same movement. Yeah. So we're seeing all of these things take place. Yeah. And that's one thing that I think, yeah, I've seen that happen in the last, well, I suppose in the last 20 years, I guess it would be. And it's in the last 20 years that I start to see things really somehow change. And here I'm going to go back to my to stuff which is more personal experience. You know, I'm a homosexual man. I don't really like the term gay because of what it's become associated with culturally, but I've had all sorts of involvement with various groups, and I can remember as 20 years ago speaking to or well in conversation with online transsexual women, yeah, transsexuals, yeah. So this is people born male who wish to live as women and wish to go, wish to sort of like go through this whole thing, and they themselves were very concerned at the time with the importation of this term transgender and this umbrella term, which seemed to be able to bring in everything and anything, yeah. They were concerned about it. Yeah, I've got a lot more concerned, much more concerned since. Yeah, because the other thing I wanted to focus on was the thing of trans issues. Yeah, because it's become a key thing. I hope it's starting to retreat now. Not in the UK. The UK is it bucks the trend. The UK is the nightmare double down authoritarian state at the moment. Yeah, but with the whole trans thing, you know, it became crazy. Yeah, I first noticed just in general with so-called gay politics. Probably, just thinking, it would be sort of like 14 or 15 years ago, suddenly noticing something's not right here. These people are kind of crazy. Yeah, yeah. These people are thinking that they have ultimate power and they have ultimate license to have power as a minority. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, this isn't how we ever made progress before. This is not what we were about. People worked through things like the Campaign for Homosexual Equality in the UK. They worked for decades to try and change laws which were oppressive, which put people in jail for having sex, consensual sex, and stuff like that. And so there were campaigns in the past. These were founded on bringing about understanding. Yeah. These were not campaigns to introduce dictatorial laws which would be imposed on people, whether they liked it or not. We were removing bad laws so that we could just be ruled under the same regime. Yeah, we weren't wanting special treatment. Yeah, and that's a very, very big difference. Yeah. So, we'd already had all sorts of civil rights things. Yeah. But things I noticed in about 2011, I think, 2010, 11, people were kind of crazy. They were expecting to be able to just have people fired from their jobs. We didn't yet have cancel culture, but they were trying for it. I just thought this is crazy. Are you idiots? They'd have something about, somebody would have written something in the Daily Mail, say, and they want to have a campaign to say this person should be sacked. It's like, why would the Daily Mail sack somebody for doing their job? It's like, they're writing an article, it's idiocy. But they felt that they have this zealous moral authority that should be able to dictate to people. Now, this is something which got worse and worse and worse, and it was the so-called trans movement, which is trans activists. And I'd like to point out, most of these people are not transsexuals. Yeah, a lot of these people aren't. I don't think they're anything. The trouble with the whole trans queer label is that Anybody can be that if they want it. It's you don't know what's there. Yeah. Now, this is something which became a real problem. Yeah. The whole trans issue has become a problem, and it's become a problem because of the impact it's had on kids. And so I'm completely against this. I'm completely against this, and I've been very explicit about being against this. Now, I am not against transsexuals. Yeah, I am not against transsexuals. I have always felt supportive of transsexuals. What I am against is people interfering with kids. Yeah, and we have had an epidemic, of kids, youngsters being being referred to gender clinics. A massive increase, and then lo and behold, however many years later, there's a mounting wave of detransitioners, and mainly this is affecting young girls. Mainly this is affecting girls. Not only, but mainly. Pretty overwhelmingly. Something is wrong here. We know there's something wrong. Cass report came out, and what they're trying to do, they're trying to say, oh, that was nothing. Yeah, it wasn't nothing. Yeah, so we have this real problem with the trans issue, and even with things like the LGB Alliance, which I mean, I'm glad that they exist, but the LGB Alliance wants to sort of like still be campaigning for gay and lesbian and bisexual rights, and is taking on board this issue. Look, as far as I'm concerned, this is not about gay and lesbian rights. I know that it is mainly, I know that mainly it is affecting gay youngsters. Gay youngsters are being persuaded that they may be trans and that they can be put on this route, yeah, without enough support, without enough input. And they will be mainly be the people who are suffering. But the important issue here isn't that they came after gay and lesbian kids, it's that they came after kids, yeah? That's the issue, yeah? And what the abuse of the trans issue by activists and ideologues has actually done is impact negatively children and women, yeah? That is the issue, yeah? And yes, we know it's affected us as gay people, probably, in terms of the transitioning of youngsters. It's impacted us the most, and especially it's impacted girls, and impacted girls who would go on to become lesbian. Yeah, probably, But the issue is that they came after the kids. That's the issue. Yeah. Now, the thing that I want to say here is like, and this is where it links in with the first part and the identity-based ideologies and everything in the postmodernism. Yeah. It's that has brought this about. Yeah. It's that brings about this whole queer theory stuff. Yeah. And it's that brings about, all of the TQ plus stuff, which is not old-fashioned transsexuals, yeah? I would like to make that very clear. I don't believe that's not old-fashioned transsexuals, yeah? The TQ plus stuff, which can include anything, yeah? And which the P word is trying to get in on there as well, yeah? Now, even they are trying to get in there as what they call minor attracted people. Somewhere, they are, yeah. But that ideology, that postmodern ideology, is what has brought this about, yeah. It's another thing. It's another, what's the word? It's another weapon. It's another weapon. The trans issue is another weapon, just as playing climate hysteria on kids is another weapon. Yeah. And the other strange thing that like so many of these sort of like movements somehow seem to manage to sort of constellate around is the idea of anti-capitalism. Oh wow, how coincidental, how convenient, yeah. But somehow they always manage to somehow, anti-capitalism somehow managed to somehow creep in there. But what I really want to say to everybody, and what I do say to everybody is, you have to separate from this stuff, yeah? Whatever it is, yeah? And lots of us have been like saying this for years, yeah? It doesn't matter if you're transsexual, it doesn't matter if you're gay, lesbian, bisexual, straight, anything. If you think you're left or you think you're right, you need to separate from this stuff because it's poisonous, it's destructive, and it's proved to be disastrous. And it's shown its face for what it is. You have to separate from this stuff and turn against it. You have to repudiate it and get rid of it, yeah? Because this is nasty, yeah? You don't come after children, yeah? You don't do it. And this stuff has to go, you know? So that's what I'd say on that particular thing, yeah. You know, it'll be a start, you know. We've got so much that we have to somehow try and sort out. I don't know how to do half of it. I really don't know how we're going to do it. But like we know, there is so much stuff to sort out. There really is. When you look at the way that things have shifted. I guess the thing is to be aware of it for a start. To be aware of it. And to be aware that a lot of stuff that's put out by the media actually is just propaganda. It's propaganda for the elite. And the elite, you know, it covers both of our major parties. It covers pretty much all of our mainstream or legacy media, especially things like the BBC. You know, it covers, you know, it's got its tentacles, it's got its tendrils in the police, in the law courts, in government, in the civil service, yeah. You've got to be aware of it, because this is what happens when you have a major shift in the locus of power. This is what happens, you know. This is what happens when you have a major shift in the locus of power. Anyway, that was all one thing, but the other thing though is like, well, that's politics, yeah. But we don't live by politics. We live by our inner life. We live by our spirituality. We live by our values, yeah. And you know, I mean, recently I went to some place where somebody was giving a talk, and it was a lovely talk, and it was great. And this person, you know, said that they were non-binary. Honestly, and I'm going to call her because, like, that's how I see her, yeah. But like, it was a lovely talk. It was a great topic that they were talking about. It's to do with spirituality and everything, and the sort of spirituality at the time particularly interested in. And the fact that this person was non-binary, I would listen to them. I would listen to them about their experience of themselves, because they can tell me about that. That isn't politics. So this is another thing I want to say. Separate from politics where politics has no place. Yeah? We really can have an awful lot of things. We can have a lot of things that we thought of as liberal and all this sort of stuff. Absolutely we can, because we do want freedom, yeah? We do want the different kinds of people that we all are to actually be able to live as the individuals that they are, like, you know, without harming other people, yeah? We want that, yeah, as far as I could see. You know, I certainly do anyway. I guess I can't talk for anybody else, you know, but we want that, you know? We want creativity. We want spirituality. We want eccentricity, yeah? It's like, I want that great English tradition of eccentricity and absurdism, yeah? And you know, and of imagination and fantasy. And I want to see more of that in life. I don't want to see less of it, yeah? But believe me, politics, and especially this postmodern politics, is not the friend of any of that. Not one little bit, so do not be fooled, yeah? We want these things, yeah. I'm happy to see transsexuals being able to live happily. I'm happy to see anybody be anything that they truly feel that they are, yeah, responsibly and and respectfully. I'm happy for all of that, but not this stuff, not this postmodern vicious politics, which essentially is a kind of really, really embittered, brittle, spiteful form of Marxism, essentially, really. That's what it is, or post-Marxism, I don't care what you call it. It's predicated upon a kind of violence, most essentially, and the use of force, and a mythology of revolution, and a mythology of grasping power. In the name of what? In the name of in the name of moral righteousness? Oh, what? Just like every religious extremist ever has done. Oh, right, okay. Well, you know what? These things, they have to be cleared away. Then we can live. Then we can live with all the wonderful stuff and all the colourful stuff and all of the variety of human nature, yeah, and the imagination and the absurdity and the humour and the love and all these things actually in reality, like we always have done. you know you know and yes, we had things get in the way of that, of course we did. That's why we had to try and remove bad laws, not bring in lots of laws to bang other people over the head with. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of how I see things, how I want what I want. I really want that. I really want lots of color, lots of creativity, lots of freedom. Yeah. And I know who's the enemy of that, believe me. Yeah. I know it. I see it. And all those new elites, the new power bases with their NGOs and their great declarations. Yeah. I think everyone sees them for what they are. Oh, they do. More and more. And that's why we're getting doubling down on trying to suppress ordinary people, demonize the demos. That's why we're getting that, because more and more people are seeing through it and realizing, yeah. So let's hope they peaked too soon and they will be swept away in the nicest possible sense. Okay, speak to you soon.